Hello there, football fans. Welcome to Room 442 this Saturday. James Sharman, Albert Vitanian, Sarah Pereira, and Mikey Singh here with you on a day where the World Cup really delivered from performances to great drama. And let's start there, shall we? As you may or may not know, we have a big Leo Messi fan on this show. We actually have three big Leo Messi fans. One guy is all CR7. He doesn't really count. So we'll dismiss Albert for the current conversation. But Argentina under a lot of pressure today. Up against Mexico in Group C. 0-0. Things aren't going well. Mexico playing very defensively, very physically. Argentina looking a shadow of the team that had gone unbeaten in 36 games up until that last defeat, of course, to Saudi Arabia. And then the little maestro steps up and scores an absolute beauty, and then assists on the second goal as well. 2-0 Argentina. Sarah Pereira, let's begin with you. Did you ever have any doubt?
Oh, absolutely. That first half was stressful. Mexico were dominating. They looked way better. I think I had a couple of questions for Scaloni with the lineup, but regardless of that, Argentina looked like it was just another, friendly almost. They didn't have any urgency. They didn't have any, I don't know, there was a lack of motivation. They weren't, winning those 50-50 balls. They were getting ran over by Mexico. But then, as you said, the medicine man himself shows up and scores a goal that I don't even understand how it went in. And after that, they definitely picked up. I mean, they scored another goal, but I noticed the change in pace when the subs were made, especially when Enzo came on. There are certain players that I feel like should be playing for this Argentine side, or starting rather, and I feel like Scaloni is still trying to find that perfect 11.
So where in the previous 37 games, 36 of which were not losses, did he get it right with this selection? Because five changes for this one. And like you said, it really was until the two River Plate boys came on that things started clicking.
Yeah, you know what? I was thinking about that myself. I said, how do we have a team that, dominated in their World Cup qualifiers, won the Copa America against Brazil in Brazil, and have gone 36 games unbeaten, and now we're struggling to play Saudi Arabia, losing to them, in fact, and then Mexico. It seems like there has been a shift in this team. Like, this is not the team that I have been watching, for the last 2 years. I'm not really sure. I think there's a lot of defensive issues, but it definitely seems like there are missing pieces. I think Lo Celso not being able to play is a huge factor.
Oh, yeah, I will say that I think we can't dismiss the immense pressure that Argentina were under heading into this matchup. They needed a result. They essentially needed to win, and that's going to change the way I think certain teams approach games. Even the best of teams. I mean, for a long time, if you saw in that midfield, Rodrigo de Paul wasn't very good. It was surprising that he stayed on as long as he did, and the game was crying out for an Enzo Fernandez, a creative type of player. And that's what happened. He comes on and scores. But I think a lot of the performances, at least the past two performances, have to do with, I think, pressure, because obviously there's a very good team here. This is a Copa America team that won the final against Brazil. And this is a team that is favored to win the World Cup. That comes with some pressure. And there is still, obviously, after what we saw, still a reliance on Lionel Messi.
Yeah, I know
Yeah.
the storyline wasn't if, the storyline was Argentina, if they lose, they're going to be eliminated from the FIFA World Cup, right? That was a big storyline. But actually, if they didn't win this game, they could have been in jeopardy here moving forward, because even a win, depending on what happened in the other games, in their final game, depending on what happened in the final games, they might not get through. So they actually needed not just a good performance, not just a draw, they needed to win this game. So who else at this moment decides to step up and put Argentina on his back? And this is why I love the World Cup. It's moments like this, it's narratives like this, and there's no one else who steps up and fulfills the narratives quite like Lionel Messi. And I know that final one has evaded him so far, but this could be the start of what could be a really special journey here. And I think as a football fan, every football fan out there, except for Alberto up there, is hoping to see
No, what do you mean? What
the
is this?
final
Hey,
story.
I like Messi too. Don't love him. I like him.
Yeah, it's
I don't know,
funny.
man. I know you're a CR7
Polarizing as he
guy.
is. But you're right. I mean, I actually thought Messi had played okay in that game. Go ahead, Mikey.
Sorry, yeah, no, I was just saying I know Albert's a CR7 guy, but yeah, keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah. No, I thought Messi actually was doing his best up until that point too. It wasn't vintage Messi, but he was putting balls into spaces. His just teammates who just were awful around him. But Sarah, you mentioned how you weren't sure how that goal went in. It's always that with Messi goals, though, right? Because that he has no backlift, and the ball just kind of explodes off his boot and just squeezes through small gaps, which really shouldn't be there.
But I think that's the thing where I find Messi so much different than all other footballers that we've seen is because if one Mexican defender was, a centimeter to the right or a centimeter to the left, that ball wasn't going in. It's the fact that he finds these spaces and is able to make them happen in that time. Like it really feels like it's defying physics. Like it's incredible. And you could see also just when he celebrated as well, like
Oof.
what that meant to him. Like he's gonna die for this team. Like he will do anything.
The
Great
Argentinian
emotion it
fans
was.
bowing. That
Oh,
was
Yeah.
another
Actually, the fan
moment.
bases on both sides was great. So much atmosphere in that stadium. It was fantastic. Switching to the other game in this group today, Poland, Saudi Arabia. Poland win this one 2-0. Saudi Arabia, again, just gave it everything, Albert. I mean, they left it all out on the field. And I think that last goal in particular, maybe an example of just pure fatigue, giving the ball away that simply. I don't know what more you can ask from the Saudi Arabian team. It's a defeat. They're still on 3 points. They're still in contention, of course. But in the end, they just ran out of steam, it seemed, against a Poland team that was better than the first match, but still not great.
Yeah, I think our expectations maybe were a little bit too high for Saudi Arabia heading into this game, and rightfully so, right? They beat Argentina. They beat the team that we just saw beat Mexico 2-0. And they could have gotten a lot more, I think, from that game. You got to think about it. They had a penalty, which Chesney saved, and the rebound, a world-class save from Chesney. So they were that close, right, to getting on the board themselves. But if you watch that game based on the balance of play, I think the deserved result was to Poland. I mean, they hit the post a couple of times. Lewandowski was finally better. They kind of started to click after he scored that goal, and Poland really started to get into the swing of things. And I think, like you mentioned, James, fatigue played a huge factor for Saudi Arabia, but they're not out of it. They're not out of this World Cup just yet.
Yeah, looking at the Group C standings right now with one match day left, you have Poland on first place and 4 points, one up on Argentina and Saudi Arabia. Mexico on the solitary point. Argentina taking on Poland now, of course, in that final match, and Saudi Arabia taking on Mexico. So still much to fight for in that group, and we'll see if Argentina can build on that. And obviously, they'll be big favourites entering the match against Poland. All right, elsewhere today in Group D, France 2, Denmark 1. It wouldn't be 3 wins in a year for Denmark over Le Bleu. In the end, it was, though, Mikey, the Kylian Mbappe show. What a performance once again. He's the best player in the world, isn't he?
He's I keep going back and forth. I'm like, you know what? One point, Erling Haaland's the best player in the world. You know what? Another point, Lionel Messi is the best player in the world. And then Kylian Mbappe reminds us, guys, I'm still here. I'm still doing my thing. I'm still balling out. And I mentioned this in my match reaction, and we're all thinking like, who's going to be the story of this World Cup? Which player is going to walk away with the golden ball? And Kylian Mbappe, through these first two matches, is making a very strong case. As we mentioned, we've all, in a way, wrote France off because of all the injuries they're dealing with all the drama up top. But they're the first team through and first team to pick up 2 wins from their first two matches. So France are quietly, in a way, doing their thing, and it's Kylian Mbappe leading the way. But I also have to give a shout out to Antoine Griezmann. Like, he is clicking as well. And if France has both those guys going, Ousmane Dembele also put in a really strong performance. If their best players are their best players, they're always going to be a threat to potentially win the World Cup.
Can I just say that, as good as they looked going forward, they're not faultless, though. They have some serious defensive frailties. I mean, if you look at their last 8 competitive matches, which includes the Nations League, they have one clean sheet. They allow teams to get back into games, and that's exactly what happened with Denmark. And if it wasn't for Hugo Lloris making a few of those saves, it could have been a lot different. I think going forward, man, I'm trying to figure out any team in this World Cup that can match them outside of maybe Brazil, which is saying a lot. So their attack is going to keep them into games. But I think once you get into the knockouts, defense is what clearly wins these championships. And I think France might struggle in the round of 16.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, but I don't know if there is a complete team at the World Cup. Really? I
No,
mean,
I
I
don't
think
think so.
we have to see Brazil and Spain play
Yeah.
another match. I think if Spain put on a show against Germany tomorrow, they're going to silence a lot of people who have been saying, okay, well, it was Costa Rica, right? Yeah, I can't wait, Mikey. I'm sitting right beside you being like, look, they sent Germany home.
But so far, what's happened in the first game hasn't really followed suit in the second game, with the exception of maybe France, right? Who looked good in both games. I mean, England, great in the first game, awful in the second game. On the flip side, Iran, awful first game, much better in the second game. Argentina, terrible in the first game, average in the second game, but still got a win, right? So, I don't know what to expect. It's interesting. Also in that group, Tunisia fell to Australia 1-0. Albert, you've been on Tunisia's bandwagon since like the 6th minute of the opening round of games. And they let you down today. The Aussies, the Socceroos, got it done. Bit of a stunner there.
Yeah, and honestly, rightfully so. I thought Australia played the game a lot better than Tunisia did. Tunisia didn't have that same intensity I felt that they did in the first match against Denmark. And I think because what they lack in quality, they need to make up for an effort. And it just wasn't there against Australia. And Australia wanted it more. And, what a nice header, too, for Australia to win that game. And once again, I also said, as much as I backed Tunisia, I thought Australia was going to be one of the worst teams in the World Cup. They're very much in contention to get out of the group.
Yeah, but a lot of pressure now in Costa Rica to maintain that mantle, right? Hold that mantle of being the worst team in the World Cup, because their rivals for that are stepping it up right now and proving us
Uh,
all wrong.
One thing you guys just mentioned about how Tunisia didn't look the same. I've been reading a lot about how teams are suffering from exhaustion because of the heat, actually. And I think it's affecting a lot more teams than, maybe we're hearing about and what we're seeing. Think about Rodrigo Ball today, or Iran was looking exhausted by like the last 10 minutes of their match. And I feel like this could have maybe been Tunisia, Saudi Arabia. There's a certain point where I think we're seeing like around the 70th minute, teams are England. They look like they've been hit by a wall, and I think the heat is really playing a factor, or maybe the 700 games they played this season. But I think we should keep that in mind.
I think it's that. Yeah, I mean, most stadiums are air conditioned, right? I think 24 degrees. But
Yeah,
the penultimate game tonight, the France game, it was built in that temporary stadium, right? Built out of all those shipping containers, and there's no climate control on that one, so that was apparently much hotter than the other games. But I think it comes down to all the games have been playing, like you mentioned there. A lot of teams who are labouring, perhaps. Although I mean, the quality of football I haven't noticed it being that low compared to most internationals. Hasn't been great, but overall, it's kind of what I expected for a World Cup. They're not often the best quality football, right?
I've enjoyed it. I've personally really enjoyed the football here, and yeah, you know what? First, James, I didn't know you knew so much about the stadiums in Qatar. I don't know.
Well,
Really.
I there was a time, Mikey, not so long ago, where I thought I might be visiting those stadiums. So,
No.
but the less we say about that, the better.
Yeah.
Um, sorry, in the table, France on 6 points, they're through to the next round. Australia on 3 points, Denmark on 1, Tunisia on 1. If Denmark's going to win the World Cup, like one of us said, they better start finding their.
Hey, they're still alive. They're still alive. They can do it.
Big game coming up: Denmark, Tunisia,
Yeah.
and France and the Socceroos. Moving on to Sunday's action, and it's back to game time for Canada, of course, up against Croatia in what John Herdman says is a defining match for the team in this World Cup. Obviously, the whole naked Herdman F Croatia gate continues somewhat. It's all kind of good natured, really. I think. I know Croatia have been responding to it, but Herdman's quotes today I thought were really good. He made light of it. He goes, "My wife's coming after you guys. She wishes she had that guy. I've got a bit more of a belly than that. I've been eating too much." He also alluded to getting caught up in the moment, perhaps a learning moment for him. He says, this being his first World Cup, men's World Cup, I should just clarify before people jump all over us for that.
Mhm.
He seemed relaxed today, I thought, Sarah. Earlier this tournament, I sensed a bit of tension behind John Herdman compared to what we used to. And that's understandable. But today he seemed back to the old Herdman, smiling, charismatic, enjoying himself. Do you get that?
Yeah, he also said that he's like, you know what, back at camp, we're feeling light and bright. Like it does seem like he's giving off like a really good impression, or maybe it's the truth that, yeah, he's feeling good. the players are feeling good. They're excited, but yeah, they're not bringing any of that extra drama from the Belgian game or any of that negativity or doubt. And I honestly think like it came off really good, and it makes me as a Canadian feel really good about this game tomorrow because the attitude seems to be there.
Oh, yeah, but are you feeling confident again? Obviously, after that Belgium match, we all felt great, but then we had a few days to think about it and overthink about it.
Yeah.
Where are you
No,
at right now?
I'm pretty confident. I think Canada can get a result against Croatia. Listen, what they did against Belgium was, we followed this team for quite a while and throughout qualifying, but it was still a little bit surprising to see how they attacked one of the best teams in the world. We can say what we want about Belgium being old and being out of form. They still possess world class players, and Canada were able to nullify that threat for most of the game. And now going up against Croatia, from what we've seen in Croatia's first match, Canada probably should be a bit better than them, considering what we saw so far. When it comes to what happened with Herdman and what he's saying, we mentioned this, we talk about it so much. I enjoy it, but now you got to back it up. Especially the players. It's on the players. We heard from Croatia in the press conference, Zlatko Dalic, the manager for Croatia, saying, "Listen, you have to respect us. We're the 2018 finalists." And then Perisic turns and I agree with him. I can't wait for this game to start. So they need to understand, and I'm sure that they do, that Croatia is going to come out 100% and more motivated probably than ever to really show Canada, listen, you got to show us some respect. But with that said, I have a lot of confidence in Canada heading into this match.
What I found interesting about Herdman's comments. He backtracked a little bit for the first time today, where he said it was a learning lesson, right? He said this could be something. It's my first World Cup. This could be something that I have to learn and get better from. Well, do you think if the match goes wrong and Canada, let's say hypothetically, they lose in emphatic style, do you think that tarnishes his value a little bit on the world stage? Because this is a big moment for him. I think we need to remember that as much as we know what he's accomplished, from those looking from the outside, do you think that he might have put some of his value and some of his legacy on the line here?
It's a good question. I think we've built this impossible character, really. Us being the media and the Canadian soccer culture. We put this guy on this pedestal. He can do no wrong. He is the perfect manager, and no one's perfect, right? And what we forget is that John Herdman's also pretty emotional. You see him post match in press conferences, right? He's a different John compared to pre match press conferences, right? He takes that game, and he's not the perfect human being because none of us are, right? He lets it affect him. So maybe we're seeing that the human side. Maybe it's a good thing, Mikey. Maybe we're seeing the human side of him, which makes him even more appealing. He's not this waxwork, this robot who's just this meticulous preparer for games and tactician who does no wrong. He's got a little bit of a edge to him. I think that's maybe makes him more likable. But I know what you're saying. It's a good point. Do you foresee many changes to the 11? I know the usual suspects are all going through their first 11s for this match, and they're all different. Everyone's got a different opinion. What do you think you'll see?
Well, I think in a World Cup, especially when the days are so condensed, and then you have guys that haven't been playing football consistently throughout the year, specifically for a team like Canada, I think the natural inclination would be, yeah, you know what, you should probably rotate your squad a little bit, right? But if you look at the way that they started that match against Belgium, and knowing that Croatia are in a way similar to Belgium, how do you rotate your squad? Do you not try and start the match, in a similar way? But at the same time, you have guys like Sam Adekugbe, who has been starting for this team throughout World Cup qualifying, has been one of the best stories. And can you really sit him on the bench again? I'm interested to find out. But one thing I'll know, and I'll be 100% positive about this, is John Herdman will have some sort of trick up his sleeve.
Always happens. Yeah, exactly. Maybe it'll be an Ismail Kone in that 11. Uh, I don't think it will be myself. I know people are calling for that, and it's inevitable at some point it's going to happen. When the Tiba came off last game, I wrote about this. He was not just passing him the midfield spot, he was passing him the torch in some ways. But it might be a bit too soon for him. I don't know, Albert. I mean, Atiba came off in the 55th, right? I think it's 55th. or 65th, I believe it was.
About 60. About
Or
60.
60 was it? Yeah, right. So it didn't play a full 90. If you're rotating and you're trying to manage minutes, then that's what you do, right, with the Tiba. So I can't imagine him not starting tomorrow.
Yeah, I can see a Atiba starting. I think it's going to be very similar. I mean, my two expectations is that maybe Junior Hoylett and Richie Larea make way for Adekube and Kyle Larin. What we saw with Morocco and Croatia is Morocco had a lot of success on the flanks, particularly on that right side with Hakimi and Hakim Ziyech. And Canada can do the same on the flanks. They're very good there with Buchanan and maybe Alistair Johnson on that right side. It's going to be incredibly difficult to take the ball away from Croatia's midfield. So I think they're going to have to use the flanks as much as possible and hopefully pack that midfield on defense. And that's where I see Kyle Larin coming in, staying up top, and then Jonathan David dropping slightly into the midfield to help manage with the amount of possession that Croatia is going to have. So I see a couple of changes, but we've seen this before. You can't predict John Herdman's starting 11.
Yeah, David ran, I think, almost 10 kilometers actually in his stint. You know, he dropped so deep, he's all over the field there. Sarah, though, last word for you, though. Obviously, it's a massive match, defining match in this World Cup for Canada, obviously. What are your expectations?
I am starting to think, I mean, we've overthought this game and this group of players so much, but I'm really starting to think that Canada can actually beat Croatia. And now I'm really thinking that Morocco is going to be the biggest hurdle, especially after seeing the Belgium side that we saw.
Wait, Sarah, can you repeat that one more time? That was just music to my ears. Sarah Pararia coming around on the Canadian men's national team.
Well, after seeing Morocco and Croatia in the first match as well, Croatia looked a little tired, and they're also older. We knew that, right? So Canada being faster for sure, like use that to their advantage. And if they can just score one, like that's my only concern. We were really struggling with that in the match against Belgium. That's why I agree with Albert. I think Kyle Larin should be starting in this match, but like who knows with John Herdman, sorry. But I do think that Canada can definitely get a point here, and it'll keep the group open, right? Because if Canada even just tie Croatia and Morocco are already tied. We'll see what happens with Morocco and Belgium, but this might even lead to another, match day 3, and it all comes down. But Canada can get a point tomorrow.
Ooh.
All I hope is that first goal, which is going to be such an iconic goal, and we'll see it the rest of our lives, will be imprinted in our memories. They'll make, awful government PSAs about it, that kind of stuff. I hope it's the most unsexy name on the team that scores it. Someone like, I don't know, like Liam Fraser comes on the bench and does it or something.
Hey, come on, James.
And look, that's nothing against Liam Fraser. But a guy that you're not thinking is going to play too many minutes in the World Cup comes off the bench.
Richie Larea the other day could have had that opportunity. Who would have had Richie Larea scoring the first ever goal?
What if there is no goal?
What if there's no goal?
What if there's no goal?
Can we wrap
it's hard to imagine based on what we've seen and the quality that they do have in attack.
Then I'm going to end up in jail because every time it's mentioned, I'm going to punch someone. Because I'm so bored of that anyway. Even before they qualify for this World Cup, and people would make fun of the 86 team. And it's so unfair, right? They qualify for a World Cup in 86. Different era, different times entirely.
They still had unattached FC.
I know, exactly, right? But for most of Canada, it's like that never happened, right?
Right.
So if they don't score another goal this World Cup, I don't care. But I will punch you in the head if I hear anyone talk about it. Okay?
I want to be there for that. I got to see that. Can we quickly just talk about best case scenario for Canada? So
6-0.
Obviously them beating Croatia, but I think Belgium beating Morocco would make the most sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want Morocco getting those points.
Yeah.
Also, Kevin De Bruyne came out and said that Belgium aren't winning the World Cup. They're too old.
Yeah. I was so happy to see that.
Whoa, he said that?
That's what Canada does to you. You play Canada, that's what happens.
But it's interesting. That's the mentality they have. I wonder, look, I'm curious about that match as well. But I think Albert's right. Morocco losing, I think, to Belgium because I can't see Belgium. But I just can't see Belgium getting that many points against Croatia either. So, but I also don't know. I feel like Morocco's the team to beat right now.
This is just going to be another wide open group.
Yep, it really is, yeah. And Morocco looked great in that first game. Maybe they'll be terrible this game. It's the way the World Cup's going so far. We'll know it's at 8 p.m. 8 a.m. is the Belgium Morocco game, I believe, tomorrow, isn't it?
I believe.
And then, of course,
Yes,
Canada at
correct.
11. And then the biggie for the rest of the world is Spain, Germany, and Sarah, of course, in the afternoon at 2 p.m. All right, well, that's Room 442. We will return tomorrow and tell you just what happened in another stadium, which I can't remember which one it is, in Doha. It's in Canada and Croatia. Hope you enjoyed that, everyone.